Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast on the Genre Equality channel. My name is Hidzir,
Issa.
and we have a very special guest yet again for this week. It is Syafiq Hussain, who I also run a different podcast with called the Hidz Wrestling Podcast. So Syafiq, what's it like to be talking about things that are not men in tights?
Ew, wrestling. Who still watches wrestling?
Don't you know it's fake?
Is it? No, I'm quite nervous about this, so I hope everyone bears with me.
Yeah, but
I have a lot of opinions, but
definitely,
I hope they're valid.
of course,
okay.
you know.
Don't sweat it, dude.
You're one of the biggest Insecure fans that I know. I think besides Hannes,
Yeah.
but not many people actually watch Insecure, and I think Insecure is a wonderful show. If you're not aware, Insecure is an American comedy dramedy television series created by Issa Rae. It's kind of partially based on Ray's web series Awkward Black Girl. It's a show that premiered in 2016 on HBO and is now currently just wrapped up its fourth season. The show is essentially about Black millennial life in Los Angeles, and that is kind of what we want to get into this on this episode with Shafiq. Isa will be kind of leading the conversation as a person who is not super familiar with the show. He's seen a bit of it, but not too much, right?
Yeah, so back when Insecure came out, I think I caught like maybe the first 4 episodes. So that was still quite a number of years back, right?
Yep.
I'm not really sure why I didn't keep up with it, but I mean, you guys have been talking about it for a while now. So let's just pretend, right, that I didn't see those 4 episodes. They might as well not have happened for me, and like kind of lay it on me and tell me what I've been sleeping on. So tell me, like, let's start with Hidz. Like, how did you kind of like discover it, and then we'll go with Shafiq, and you guys can tell me how you stumbled upon it.
Insecure kind of came around the time of this birth of this golden age of like half-hour dramedies that are more substantial than half-hour comedies, but also has the artistic and emotional depth of hour-long dramas. You know, like shows like Atlanta and Barry and stuff of that ilk, and kind of Insecure fell into that. The biggest difference with Insecure was that I was intrigued by its creator, first of all, Issa Rae, and its premise about the Black female millennial experience, you know, from the perspective of two friends. It's a very different subject matter because we were very, very used to male protagonists or male anti-heroes and their depth and nuances and failures and contradictions and things like that. But we haven't quite seen it from a Black female perspective, let alone something this grounded. I had heard a lot of phenomenal reviews for the show. For the first season, I wasn't watching it week to week, but the second I caught up, the second season, I kind of watched it week to week all the way until now, and it's been, in my opinion, like one of the best shows on TV, and just features like god level writing. It's me as an aspiring writer or as a writer in general. I can only strive to become this great. You know, to me, Issa Rae is the best of the dramedy writers, alongside, you know, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who does Fleabag. You know, it's just one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And Vic, how about you?
It was sold to me by a friend who just said that it had great music in it. That's usually enough for me.
Yeah.
And then like specifically, someone said that there's a cover of the Internet's Girl in like the first episode, and it was a really good cover. And then someone showed me the clip, and I was like, okay, I'm watching this. And then I think right after that clip is a little bit of Issa doing like a freestyle rap to herself in the mirror. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I have to watch this. It was actually sold to me as a show called Insecure as Fuck initially.
That was the title of the first episode.
Of the first episode, right? And then
right.
it was actually every episode in season 1 was something as fuck. So so it's like insecure as fuck, real as fuck, guilty as fuck, which is so good.
Same thing like in season 4 was like low-key something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then season 2 it was hella.
Hella great, hella open, hella shook, you know. Yeah.
And then season 3 was like something like obsessed light, ready light.
Yeah.
Okay, so after like a few episodes of watching it, I realized that it's for girls. So essentially it was just like girls, like Lena Dunham's girls, only much better, less annoying.
Yeah.
and in LA, basically.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I kind of missed the girls comparison just because I didn't want in
Yeah,
my head I couldn't put it together with girls because girls is such like
yeah.
it's a good show,
It's so toxic.
but it's so toxic,
Yeah,
and Insecure is very different and a lot better lah.
yeah. And then like Lena Dunham writes it herself, so there's that
Yeah, yeah.
comparison. Except that this is way better.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of this like insightful, raunchy, hilarious journey through the life of a 20-something black
Hmm.
woman that really cuts through stereotypes of what black people, of what at least of what outsiders think black people are.
Yeah.
Okay.
It cuts through the stereotype with a lot of sharp wit and effusive spirit. And Issa Rae in particular plays a protagonist that is incredibly awkward, like super like charmingly awkward.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of comedies where there's like the manic pixie white girl who's awkward
Yeah.
that but I haven't quite seen it from a black presentation before, because Issa Rae is kind of a black nerd. From the way that she raps to herself, it immediately won me over lah.
Mhm.
And I think from right till now, up till now, like in season 4, like Issa Rae being awkward just continuously being is just funny to me. I ROFL all the time.
Yeah.
But what I didn't expect was to be super invested in all her friends as well,
Mm.
from Molly to a lesser extent Kelly and Tiffany.
Kelly for me
Although
especially.
I do feel like Kelly, like pound for pound, like per average, is like the largest laugh factor of the show.
Yeah.
Um, like it's kind of weird 'cause Kelly doesn't have any quite depth to her really,
Like at all.
but but she's just like this joke factory, and
Yeah.
you kind of need that sometimes amidst the heaviness of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So before we kind of move on to you guys like discussing the most current season, right?
Mhm.
Why don't you, in kind of broad strokes, without giving too much away? I mean,
Mhm.
like obviously, I think it's part of the due day. We don't have to. I mean, we don't have to worry about spoilers for the first 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least, catch me up with the story and where are the characters right now? In sort of really broad strokes.
Okay. For the first season, it basically focuses on relationships, more romantic relationships. From Issa's point of view and her friend's Molly point of view. Trouble with boys. Season 2 and 3 was more of trouble with work. And season 3 was more of trouble with gentrification. But it's all very interesting because their love lives are important, their work lives are important, the gentrification of of their city is important. But season 4 kind of delves us into something that had kind of been brewing a little bit in seasons 1 and 3, in terms of Issa and her best friend Molly have been each other's rocks for so long, but there are fundamental disagreements in how they live their life and their basic life philosophy that has kind of been building and building and building and building to season 4.
Yep.
So season 4 kind of deals with the dissolution of their friendship,
Mhm.
how they turn from best friends to people who just don't speak to each other anymore. Season 4 opens with kind of a flash forward a bit to what happens in the middle of the season, where Issa just says, Molly, I don't fuck with her anymore.
Yeah.
Which is quite shocking for us because we've been through them. They come as a package.
Yeah.
They're those two
Yeah.
people that come together all the time. So how did this friendship break apart? And the way it's done is so organic, it's so natural. There's nothing very overly melodramatic or so opera-y about how their friendship dissolves, because from my point of view, I've had a lot of friendships dissolve the same way, and it's through very, very small things, but things that are not addressed at when they should be addressed. So they start building and they start building and building and building. Like, it's very naturalistic. A lot of people were on the hashtag of the season was, are you on Team Molly or Team Issa?
Oh wow.
But like in my opinion, it's not about whose team you're on. It's more about demonstrating how emotionally damaging it can be when you fall out with your friends, and it's kind of one of the most relatable things because not everyone has like a child or a wedlock or stuff like that, but everyone has broken up with friends.
Yeah.
So this tense negotiation around the changing nature of their relationship has kind of been the crux of season 4.
Do you also feel like you're on team neither? Like you are the other friend who sees both sides of the story? I think that was very smart, the way it was written for you to be the other person in their friend group. So basically you're Kelly.
Kelly or Tiffany.
And then you're just you understand where both of them are coming from, but like you're just unable to let them know. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else you want to know, Isa?
No, I think that pretty much summarizes all of it. I mean, like, definitely going to hop on this as soon as my watching schedule kind of clears up,
Mhm.
with all the things that we need to watch. But yeah, but guys, take it away. And just a spoiler warning for people who have not caught up with season 4. Syafiq and Hidzir are going to be talking about some of the topics that are pertinent to that. So if you are not up to date with season 4, please make sure that you can skip past to the next two topics that we have later on, which is blind spotting and a little documentary called Pina.
Yeah,
Right. So spoiler
definitely.
warning in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, we're gonna be delving into some plot details. I'm not gonna like spell out beat for beat what happens, lah.
Mhm.
But like season 4, after many seasons of breakups and breakdowns and hookups and fuck ups uh and Issa's latest unhinged endeavor, this season is mostly about Molly and her relationship with Molly. Yeah, there are other things as well. Lawrence is in
Yeah.
there. A new character named Condola is in there. Tiffany deals a little bit with postnatal depression, which is an interesting look as well. Kelly is just being Kelly.
Yeah.
Nothing much has changed there. But what do you think about season 4 as it began? Did you kind of see why the friendship would break up, or were you surprised by how it happened?
I wasn't surprised at all.
Mm.
Like you could, I felt I could see where it was going.
Yep.
I think it was very clear in how she was writing it. Also,
Mm.
and then it was a countdown, wasn't it, to the
Yes,
block party?
correct. Yeah,
So we were at like 4 weeks before the block party, and then
3 weeks, 2 weeks.
3 weeks,
Yeah.
2 weeks, yeah, and then the block party was where
Mm-hmm.
it eventually
Uh, Blew
blew
up.
up. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't surprised at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because this season especially has showed Molly mature and grow as a person in a way that in season 1 to 3, in various aspects of her life, she was kind of a mess, right?
yeah.
Like either in terms of boys or in terms of work.
Work. Yeah,
She felt NY at her previous a social work company that she
yeah.
was working at, whether it was Lawrence or Nathan, or I forgot the trap producer guy that she was hooking up with also.
Daniel.
Daniel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many Daniel stands out there. I don't get it. Like I don't get
Really?
Daniel anyway. I mean, like, he's fine. There's
But
nothing wrong.
no, Nathan is fine. Nathan's my
But
guy.
yeah, yeah, no, like for me it's Nathan as well.
Yeah,
But
the guy's hot.
Lawrence has been her Ross, lah, so to speak.
Yeah.
If she was Rachel, like Lawrence is Ross, right?
Can we talk about guys like this?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because okay, um, part of the reason that Molly wants to disassociate with Issa is because she feels like her track record with guys and her track record with doing what she wants has always been messy and has always led to failure.
Yeah.
And part of it is correct because Molly has watched Issa through the last 3 seasons. In fact, like even before that, before we met Issa, so she knows Issa inside out, lah.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a lack of faith that Issa can pull off what she wants to pull off. She's trying to do an ambitious concert block party that's going to require a lot of planning and a lot of effort and a lot of manpower, which Issa has shown previously that she's kind of flaky.
Yeah.
Issa trying to be friends with Condola, who, if you're not aware, Condola is currently dating Lawrence, who is Issa's former
Ex-boyfriend.
longtime partner, ex-boyfriend. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that already has like red flags, and Molly's like, fuck that. I'm out. I can't offer her advice anymore, and she's lacking faith in Issa, and I felt it was unfair, but also understandable. And yet at the
Yeah.
same point, I also saw things from Issa's point of view because the show is from Issa's point of view, and then you saw
Yeah.
that she really was trying this time.
Yeah. Like you
Yeah.
felt that she's grown so much,
Mhm.
and at the same time, like I think we all have that flaky friend
Mm.
who we all doubt, like they could never pull off anything. So like we kind of get where Molly's coming from as well.
Yeah. I mean, like Issa is still hustling, working as the superintendent of her LA apartment complex, and
Yeah.
kind of navigating her friendship. And kind of the quietly groundbreaking aspect of the season is just how little weight is given to her dating life, because so much of it has been last time, right? And now it's more
Yeah.
towards her interior journey. As an important part of the season is her turning into her early 30s as well. It's no longer a show about a mid-20s woman in LA. It's about an early 30s black woman in LA. She says, I'm on this forward path, no job, no man. All this sounds bad, but it's actually really good. She tells Molly over their self-care Sunday sessions, right? Molly, in the meantime, is dating. Oh my god, I keep calling him Asian Bay. Andrew, right?
Yes,
But Asian
Andrew.
Bay,
Or
Asian Bay is what the internet calls him.
or
From
Andy.
Andy, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And even her romantic life is not without its rockiness. It is quite promising, but at the same time, I think Molly is a bit stubborn and unwilling to compromise in certain aspects of a relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
let's deal with well, okay, I guess before we talk about all the relationships and stuff, right? Let's talk a little bit
Yeah.
more about how you feel Molly perceives Issa's relationships, and how does Issa perceive Molly's relationships?
Okay. I guess the thing that they're trying to tell us
Yeah.
throughout the season is Molly feels like Issa's just gonna go back to her old patterns and just keep
Mm,
getting
yeah.
into trouble and never settling for anything good,
Yep.
right? And because there was one scene where she was talking to Lawrence outside
Mm-hmm.
the Tiffany's place, was it? Yeah.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
and then she was like, look at Issa just going back to her old patterns again. So there was that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what did you think of Issa's point of view on Molly?
I think Issa was almost to the detriment of the friendship, too focused on getting her life right, right? Like she was
That's
focused on this
true.
block. She was focused on this block party. She was focused on being in this awkward situation also with Condola and with Lawrence, trying to
Yeah,
be friends with everyone and getting that right, getting her life
yeah,
right and everything. So she's put so much energy into it that she's kind of neglected to fill in the blank spaces for Molly, who doesn't understand how she got from point A to
that's right.
point Z,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
so Molly makes false assumptions on that, and part of it is Issa's fault also, but part of it is Molly's fault for not having more faith in her friend. So
mm-hmm,
it's a very nuanced take on how this friendship dissolves, and no one was really at fault here, right? The
mm-hmm.
big blowing up point was Issa asking Andrew for an artist contact. Was it a Schoolboy Q or someone else?
Yes. No, Schoolboy
Yeah.
Q cancelled, and then he asked for Vince Staples.
Oh yeah, yeah. So asking
Yeah,
for Vince Staples
yeah,
contact, right?
yeah,
Which like, oh man, Vince Staples was actually in the show. I was pretty
yeah.
surprised.
He was
But
hilarious also.
yeah,
Yeah, so was
but
her.
yes, yeah. But the
Yeah,
whole thing about Issa asking Molly for help in trying to book this artist, Molly saying no because she's
yeah.
tired of always being Issa's fallback option,
Way
right?
out.
And then
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and then Molly asking Andrew, who to be honest is not. I mean, he is like working with his talent relations with Ben Staples, right? So if you were to
yeah.
get
He's
through
at
Ben
Live
Staples,
Nation.
you have to get through Andrew. But Molly sees that as a betrayal. Do you think that is fair?
Yeah. Ah, no, that was a bit unfair because, like, if from Andrew's perspective, he's just doing a
Yeah.
favor for your
For
girlfriend's best friend, which is like in most situations, a
mm.
good thing. Yeah,
And
except
also
for
getting
this
your artistic
weird.
gig, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was the way that specifically at the block party, which takes place halfway through the season, the way that
yeah,
friendship blew up and the argument that followed, came about in such a hmm, contradictory way, because like everybody didn't really understand where the other person was coming from, and it was also very bad because Issa and Molly were just starting to kind of make up at that point, like they were
yeah.
trying to
They
make,
were doing the dance. Yeah,
they were doing the dance together, so we thought, okay, now this is the moment where everything's good, and then it
yeah,
blows up over that. But I also feel like it's necessary for the friendship to blow up at least for a while, because if not, they wouldn't have started to address the underlying issues that have been building up from seasons 1 to 3.
correct.
Like, what do you think about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've just. I think the number of times they fought and had problems, they just sweep it under the rug over what do they call it, self-care Sundays. Yeah, that's what they used to do. And then whenever things get like a bit tricky, they would just avoid it and not talk about their problems. I think it's been very unhealthy for the both of them.
Yep.
So it's come to the point where like it was going to blow up, and then it did in such a messy fashion.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed, like at the end for Issa, not disappointed in the show. Like
Mhm.
disappointed for Issa that like it blew up in a way that both her and Lawrence couldn't have predicted lah.
Yeah,
Uh, but at the very least, it encouraged both Molly and Issa to reconcile because they have nothing. They realize that when everything else is gone, they are the only two constants in their life.
that's true.
Plus, what I really like about the show also is that like by season 4, like every character is very strong, very specific, and very distinct.
Yeah.
They're distinct enough to demand their own episode or their own storyline where we kind of care about them as much, or not as much as Issa, but close to as much as we care about Issa.
That's
I
correct.
enjoyed seeing where Nathan comes from. Kind of dealing with the stigma of mental illness in the Black community.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
was interesting too. Tiffany dealing with postnatal depression was quite fascinating because Tiffany has always been the so well put together person
Hmm.
of the group. She's the one that
Yeah.
has always had it together. When Issa and Molly and Kelly were messes, like Tiffany is the one that had it together, and this is the season where she kind of fell apart, and that was good
Yeah.
too. I like Lawrence, who is suddenly a capable, hardworking, well-earning individual after him just slumming around in seasons 1 and 2,
Yeah.
uh, and it really deals with like and this feels very universal but very specific also in the fact that
Hmm.
Issa feels left out because when Issa was dating Lawrence, and the reason she broke up with Lawrence was because Lawrence was going nowhere, right? And
Correct.
all the care and effort and mental well-being that like Issa put into Lawrence is finally reaping rewards for a different woman.
Yeah.
Like some woman found Lawrence put together, but Issa was the
Yeah.
one who put him together. So like I really really like that little touch lah.
Yeah. And I think when they reconciled, both of
Mm.
them were at like a better place.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah, Issa just did the blog party and was a success, and
Mm.
she's looking to do more. And then Lawrence just came back from an interview. Like we probably assume like one of the big tech companies. So they're
Mhm.
both in like much better places. And then you felt so good for them, and like there was a glimmer of hope. Like the only reason they didn't work because they both weren't at good places, and now they are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Hmm.
dun, dun, dun.
I know. Like it's the twist at the end. I almost saw it
Yeah.
coming, but because
Yeah.
it had to be something big like that to break them up again, and I
Yeah.
kind of get it, and it kind of reminded me of do you watch the wind down, like kind of the post show
Yeah.
discussion that you had
Yes.
at the end, right?
Yes.
So like
Yeah.
when Issa Rae pointed out that the season 2 finale had her fantasy of having the first child with Lawrence, right? And now
Mm,
she doesn't get to have Lawrence's first child anymore.
that's
So
true.
it's a nice little callback to something that happened like years ago, which I kind of forgot about. It's a very
Yeah.
nice storytelling touch.
And,
What do you think? Sorry, go ahead.
and it was also the plot of Usher's Confessions, part one and two. I was kind of disappointed they didn't use the song for that scene because it's
Mhm.
exactly that. Because Usher says something along the lines of it's hard for me to tell you the woman I love that I'm having a baby with a woman that I don't, something like that.
Yeah,
Because they
yeah,
used Case of the X for a closing episode
correct.
like
Yes,
earlier in the
yeah.
season. Yeah, I was like, oh man. But yeah,
And, like Maya's Case of the X was actually my favorite needle drop of the season because it was so perfect at
oh
that
my
at that
god.
moment. Um, let's get on to like Molly and Andrew. Like, what do you feel about their relationship? About why it worked and why it didn't work?
I think firstly it worked because they're both kind of successful,
Mhm.
and like initially when before they started dating, both of them were like kind of like non-committal to it. You know what I mean? They
They
were
were like
like
fuck buddies.
fuck buddies at first, yeah, essentially, and then I guess they both caught feelings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I guess it worked for a while because I guess they're both quite busy, and then at the start, like whatever time they had, they spent with each other, and then we know this didn't carry on very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what did you think?
I thought that both of them. I thought that she found in Andrew what she was lacking in Issa. Someone stable, someone who knew what they wanted.
Yeah,
It's a bit weird because like Andrew is almost like the anti season 1 to 3 Issa, where he was very steady,
yeah,
and not messy emotionally. But it
mm,
got messy. But that's what she assumed of Andrew, lah. It got messy emotionally because she assumed that Andrew would be there and will be cool with whatever, right?
mm,
But
yeah,
when she's too busy working to meet up with him, when when he has to basically rearrange his own busy schedule around Molly, things
yeah.
start to get weirder, lah. And then the whole thing with his brother comes up, right? Uh,
How do we
you
feel
know,
about that
mm,
scene at the hotel with the
so okay.
towels?
First of all, the episode in Mexico was very beautifully done. Like I love that episode.
Incredible. Yeah,
Yeah, it was so fun. It was very bright, and it's nice to see the characters in a different setting.
yeah,
But the scene that we're talking about comes about when Molly asks for a towel at a
yeah,
poolside,
yeah.
and the I don't know what you call it, a pool person, asked for her
The
card.
towel lady.
The towel lady asked for a card, because you have to be a guest at the hotel for a towel, right?
Yeah.
Molly takes it as a case of racism. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she's not giving it to me because I'm black, but
Yeah,
you give towels to the white couple earlier.
yeah,
Basically, Andrew's brother calls her out saying that, like, not everything is racism.
yeah,
I feel that it wasn't, and Molly was overreacting also.
yeah,
But I also feel that Andrew's brother could have handled it better because
yeah,
he out and out asserted that, like, Molly's uh Molly's vulnerability in terms of racism, like, isn't valid.
correct. And I think he was also coming from a standpoint where you don't think I go through racism too. Like I'm
Mm,
Chinese. I
mm.
get it all the time too. Yeah, I thought that was a very, very important thing to include in the episode,
Yes,
actually.
I
Yeah.
I agree, and there's been a lot of discussion. I mean, specifically right now,
Mm-hmm.
because of
Yeah.
the Asian American community seem to be unaware
Mm-hmm.
that racism for Black people is very different
Of
to
course. Yeah.
racism from
Yeah.
Asian Americans.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for one thing, they don't get shot and killed, or
Yeah.
and things like that. And
Yeah.
one of the startling images that, like, has come out, over the George Floyd killing was the Asian American officer, right, just standing by and letting the black guy,
Yeah.
get killed,
Yep.
and you know so it's kind of like that obliviousness with the Asian American community. Yet,
Mm.
yes, they do get discrimination also,
Yes.
but
But
their
it's not the
discrimination
same.
is it's not the same, and they often have, like, no idea how much worse it is for the Black community.
Yeah.
So for Molly to feel threatened at that moment,
Yeah.
yes, she overreacted, but like, the Asian guy shouldn't have dismissed it so
Yeah.
out of hand, lah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think both of them were kind of in the wrong.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
true. Yeah.
which is what I like about the show, because everyone is kind of in the wrong. Like,
Yeah, which
nobody
is
is
what
like,
I think Issa
yeah.
does all the time. That she makes
Mhm.
it so that everyone is in the wrong. Literally every person in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're somewhat in the right, but somewhat in the wrong, lah. So
Yeah.
it's a very humanist approach to writing character,
Yes.
which is kind of rare, lah. I mean,
Yeah.
again, with the exception of Kelly, lah. Kelly is just a joke machine. Kelly is amazing. Kelly is the season.
Kelly's British accent this season.
Yeah.
And that was with Amine, the rapper, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened to your accent? I'm from Philadelphia. Let's go.
Oh, that was amazing. Was it like Issa's brother was the one who was trying to trip her up with the accent?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite parts.
What are your thoughts about Brexit?
Okay. I didn't want to touch about like Lawrence for a while
Mhm.
because for some reason that I don't understand, like
Yeah.
on the internet, people seem to hate Lawrence, and I don't
Really?
get it. Do you hate Lawrence?
I don't. Not at all.
Because like
Why do people hate Lawrence?
because they think he like Issa deserves better, and
Ah.
maybe at one point she did,
Yeah.
but Lawrence right now seems to be in a better position than Issa and has kind of grown a lot lah.
Yeah.
And I think the whole point of Lawrence's arc is that like people are not defined by one failure or
That's
by
right.
one year of depression, right?
Yeah.
And people seem to keep forgetting the fact that it was Issa who cheated
Yeah.
on Lawrence, right? But
Oop.
Daniel.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I like at first I kind of felt the same way, but I think Lawrence has grown on me over the last couple of seasons, lah.
Mm.
But at the same time, going forward, it's going to be like really messy with Lawrence having a baby with another
Yeah.
woman, a woman that is kind of Issa's friend as well.
Yeah.
That's going to be weird. Yeah. So I mean, I liked everyone. Is there any like other small characters that you kind of enjoyed this season?
Sorry, just on Lawrence.
Oh, go ahead.
Wanted your opinion on this. Like, he is not the strongest actor on the show, is he?
No, he's not. Yeah.
He's quite flat most of the time. Like
Mhm.
I think that his chemistry with Ethan like doesn't really come off as organic as it should be sometimes.
Yeah.
Like even
Yeah.
when they're bantering, it doesn't feel as good as it should. Yeah, this is like a little nitpick for me.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was also wondering about that because I don't know whether that was an acting deficit on his part or whether it was a conscious
That's true.
choice
Yeah.
to show that they're always never quite in sync.
Yeah, because I've never seen him in anything else.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
so I don't
I think
know.
based on kind of what he said on the wind down, part of me believes that it's a conscious acting choice to show that the chemistry is not as
Okay.
strong as it should
Yeah.
be lah. Even
Okay.
at the moments when they're super comfortable together, they're still a bit like not in sync there.
Yeah.
And it's a very small acting choice, and I think it's intentional.
Okay.
But yeah, but like to your point, the reason why Lawrence is so hated is probably because of the lack of chemistry with
Yeah.
Hidzir. Because like Daniel is like Sparks, right?
Yeah,
Nathan is
that's
Sparks.
true. Yeah. Ooh, Nathan. Rrr.
The way he reacted when he found out that his ex
Oh, yeah.
Issa was back with Lawrence,
Yeah.
is the most relatable I think guy moment
Yeah.
in this season because I think I've reacted that way too.
Yeah.
Like when you find out that your ex is dating someone else, you
Yeah.
think you're cool with it until like the fact hits you,
Yeah.
and then immediately he starts like bad mouthing him like very subtly.
Do you think that was meant to show a bit of his bipolar personality as well?
Sure, yeah, to an extent, but I think mostly is to show how guys
bitterness.
react
Yeah.
to the moment. I think guys, whether they are mentally ill or whether they're totally
Yeah.
fine,
You bitter.
yeah, you were better. That was like everything he said there, like
Yeah.
it was a backhanded compliment, and I really, really get it, lah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also his bipolar nature is an interesting choice to deal with because I like how they did it without overly dramatic circumstances. Like he
Yeah.
didn't go nuts and shoot anybody, things
Yeah.
like that. Basically, he just disappeared from Issa's life, came back, explained his situation, and
Yeah.
you kind of get to know him better, lah.
He didn't go full Kanye.
He didn't go full Kanye.
Yeah.
Kanye is definitely bipolar, right?
Yeah, he is.
By the way, like the actor who played Nathan was actually like injured recently, right? In the Black Lives Matter.
Oh, that's right.
protest.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got shot with a rubber bullet.
I know everyone was heartbroken for him.
I know, because everyone loves Nathan.
Yeah. I think you were asking earlier about which other
Yeah.
characters like stood out. I think for
Yeah.
me, this season was definitely is his name Amir? Issa's brother.
His brother, yeah.
I think it was so good this season.
Yeah, I know. Like I felt like he's always been in all the seasons, but he's never really been a major part of it.
Yeah,
The way that
this is the
in
first
season.
time like he's truly shined.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
100% agreement.
I think the first time we see him was at the fundraiser at Issa's apartment complex when he was DJing.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
That was the first episode, right? Totally forgot about
No,
that.
that's true. And then Issa was telling him, come help out with some things, and then he's like, no, I have to DJ in a while. And then Issa told him, oh, you're just pressing a few buttons. You're not gonna get couple tunnel.
Speaking as like, okay, I guess both of us have DJ, right? That is so insulting because it's so much more than that.
Yeah, how dare you?
How dare you?
Yeah,
We just
it's a lot of
play
twisting of knobs.
twisting of knobs, or we just play CDs, shit like that, lah. Yeah, I really like the brother and like the Mexican restaurant that they went with on Thanksgiving,
Yeah, that was a great
and
episode.
everything. Yeah, fantastic. Like I like the way everyone's relationship came together and broke apart. Andrew and Molly, Issa and Molly. In fact, this season, like Issa, for the first time, if I'm not wrong, we met her mother, right?
Yes.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
Thanksgiving episode.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember having met her before, but it spoke a lot to her character as well. That she had no one else to turn to but her mother, and we
Yeah,
hadn't seen her
at that
mother in
point.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really really good. Like I mean, any like concluding thoughts about Insecure as a show and Insecure the fourth season?
I just want to say that Insecure has had like the best music that's ever been used in any television show I've ever seen in my life. I know this is biased, because like the music in the show just speaks to me. Like every week I discover a new artist or a new song that I get very into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 100% one of the best soundtracks you'll find in cinema or in TV. I think we're in terms of like trying to get an understanding of
Yeah.
Black millennial experience.
That's right.
This is probably the best show out there. Yeah, I mean there are other great Black led shows.
Yeah.
Like the magical surrealism in Atlanta is very artful.
Mhm.
The kind of potent political fire in Dear White People is very good as well.
Yeah.
But kind of finding humor in discrimination and in Black life that you kind of find in Kenya Barris's Blackish is good as well.
Which a lot of people hate.
Which a lot of people hate. But
Yeah.
I think like Insecure is the one show that kind of combines all of those elements into like
Yeah.
one very concise package.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's probably the best example of the Black millennial experience that is represented on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, us not being Black people, it gives us an idea of what day-to-day life is.
Yeah.
There are some shows where it's like, oh, it's all about oppression, it's all
Yeah.
about racism, it's all about dealing drugs and shit like that. Like this is different. They're just like normal 20-year-olds who are working in like social media and shit.
Yeah. It's woke
Which-
enough.
It's woke enough, but
Yeah.
also grounded enough to embrace their flaws as human beings that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with race, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, brilliant show, and I saw if you haven't caught up, like you should like over the next few months or weeks, like do catch up because
Yeah.
I think there is no more Insecure for a while. Like
Oh.
because like COVID has stopped production,
Right.
and Insecure was supposed to be in production a few months ago, so
Yeah.
I think the next season won't be for another year or year and a half.
Damn.
Also, Issa,
Uh-huh.
the music is curated by the legendary Rafi Al Shadiq.
Yeah, so I heard. I read that Solange is also like
Yeah,
as
Solange.
musical
Yeah,
talent.
also. So like between Solange and Rafi Al Shadiq.
I'm sold just on that alone. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm sold. I was-
Actually, I made a playlist for you.
damn.
the best of
Send it over.
season
Send it
4.
over. Sweet,
I'll just send it over
sweet,
later.
sweet.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Thanks.
Definitely, man. And there was our discussion of HBO's Insecure. If you want to watch it, you can find it on HBO Now or HBO Go or HBO Max. The first 4 seasons are now completely available for your viewing. Me and Syafiq would definitely highly recommend it, lah. And yeah, that's it for our Insecure discussion. Please tune in. We are about to discuss Blindspotting and Pina in just a bit. But in the meantime, thanks so much, Syafiq, for coming on.
No
Yeah, man.
problem. Enjoy, guys.
Yeah, we'll have you back soon on a different thing.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
You'll have me.
yes.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you did so well for a non-wrestling thing.
Oh, thank you. It means a lot. I was insecure earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, I'll go now. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for stopping by, Syafiq. And if you want to listen to more of Syafiq, right, tune into our other podcasts, the Hard Hits Wrestling podcast, also on Mixcloud and Facebook and all those other places. All right. Thanks, Syafiq. Goodbye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye. And that was our deep dive into Insecure with our special guest, Syafiq Hussain. Once again, we'd like to thank him so much for joining the podcast. But anyways, now we're going to get back into our regularly scheduled programming where I recommend something to Issa Fong and Issa Fong recommends something to me.
Yep.
And for this episode, right, we're going to be discussing two different movies. One is a non-fiction movie about a groundbreaking modern dance
Choreographer.
dancers, choreographer. Yeah. Sorry, I was kind of struggling for that word there. Choreographer, named Pina Bausch. This was a 2011 film. And it's a very experimental documentary. We'll get into why it's experimental later on. But firstly, we'll talk about Blindspotting. A lot of you may, if you are part of our Singaporean listeners, you may not have heard of Blindspotting because unfortunately, this 2018 comedy drama film never did come to Singapore. It wasn't even in the indie theaters, like Projector didn't pick it up, Anticipate Pictures didn't pick it up. So it was just something I had to watch online when it came available to streaming. And I thought it was particularly relevant for this time and for any time, to be honest. Like, I mean, people keep saying that, movies like this are relevant, but it's been relevant for 400 years,
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Like, I don't like the term unprecedented. It's so precedented that it's sad. But anyways, this is a film produced, written by, and directed by Daveed Diggs and Rafael Cassell. It follows a parolee, a black man with 3 days left on his sentence, only to have him witness a police shooting that threatens to ruin a lifelong friendship. So yes, this was kind of a movie partly inspired by the 2016 Black Lives Matter movement. So it just keeps rolling on again. Still relevant today, and also partly inspired by these two people who grew up in Oakland and watching kind of their neighborhoods gentrify and how it affects them. So Isa, this is your first time watching it, correct?
That's right. I completely didn't know about this movie's existence. Right, it went completely under the radar for me. So, in light of all the, I mean, people have been on social media kind of like recommending, educate yourself, watch these movies and stuff like that. So I've gone through a lot of that, but like Blindspotting didn't come up. So like it was great to kind of like add to that list of movies that spoke to the moment that we're kind of in right now, in the States, right? So it was surprising that something this good went under the radar for us here in Singapore at least. And just generally, I feel like it didn't get that much press or that much coverage in total while I was just looking through like reviews and stuff like that, and then just reading up on what it was about. Which is a bit sad because it's a great movie.
Yeah, definitely. I think like it was a very thrilling, riotous, very language drunk elegy and celebration for a city that doesn't really get the spotlight. Oakland is not LA. Oakland is not New York. But Oakland itself as a city is interesting. It's forever evolving. It's becoming something new always. And whether that's a good thing or bad thing, this movie kind of delves into as well. I really like the vibe of the film. I mean, first of all, the soundtrack is just killer. I mean, that's the least of it. But the soundtrack is fabulous. It's like it was the 2018. All my favorite songs are in there. It is brilliant. But besides the whole, the issue of police brutality or police shootings, this is also a tender and hilarious character study of two neighborhood friends, played by the film's writers and producers Daveed Diggs and Rafael Cassell, who work for a moving company. They try not to run afoul of the law and have strikingly different reactions to gentrification and process everything bewildering or beautiful or upsetting in their lives by spitting casual exploratory rhymes. Literally, like they kind of do spoken word poetry or rap to each other. Their friendship feels like this vital, endless freestyle. Daveed Diggs plays Colin, right? He's a black man with braids living in a halfway house. And as I mentioned, as he nears the end of his parole for a felony assault, it's kind of a mystery at first what his felony is, but it's revealed gradually. He kind of he's trying to keep a low profile, shall we say? And Miles, who is the great, played amazingly by Cassell, is a white boy wearing a grill and packing a pistol. He disdains change in Oakland, especially once the hipsters start taking him for one of
Yeah.
them rather than the town lifer who he is. So yeah, it's a great look at friendship and gentrification as well. What are your thoughts on the film?
I mean, it. I didn't expect it. I think when you pitched this to me to kind of watch it, right,
Mm,
and the tone in which, well, what was going on a couple of weeks ago, especially when everything just
mhm.
started, like I didn't expect it to be as funny as it turned out to be.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's such a raw look at a friendship dynamic, right? That is has a lot of extra complexity because of the context that they're situated in, and the changes that are
And also the racial
yeah, and the
dynamics
racial
between a black
dynamics,
man and a
right?
white
Like
man. Yeah,
the
yeah.
very the amazing kind of confrontation near the climax, so, just after the climax of the action, I guess we could say.
Hmm.
Wow,
Hmm.
that was moving in many different ways, and I think like what's so fascinating is like the whole idea of blind spots, right? Like that's kind of brought up
Mm.
by Colin's ex girlfriend Valerie.
Yeah, slash baby mama, baby
Oh
mama.
yeah, yeah. So like the whole idea about like
Yeah.
you will always have a blind spot, right? Because of cognitive
Mm.
bias and things like that. Like I felt
Yep.
that didn't quite come true until the end, right? Like you don't really see these kind
Yeah.
of things. The what are the blind spots that these individual characters have? The moment it's mentioned, you start to look for that, but even then, it's not clear until that confrontation itself, which is fascinating. It is a study in the use of language and the whole idea like Goethe Stein, like what's in a name, right? Um,
Yep.
and I didn't expect any of that at all.
Hmm.
I was thinking like it was going to be a lot more gritty, like an urban film about like what life is like in Oakland, in that time, right? Because Oakland now is
Mm.
vastly different from what it used to be. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I was very taken by it. It was an easy watch. Like
Hmm.
it didn't, it wasn't overly long. I thought the pacing was great. I thought the acting was great, and only after I watched everything did I realize that it was also written and directed by the two of them, which kind of added like a
Yeah.
very interesting, kind of interesting perspective, right, into how they wanted to frame everything and all of that. uh and But most of all, I think like the to and fro's and the freestyle and the spoken word, often which were very powerful, required a lot of my attention. In fact, like
Mm.
the I think the ultimate kind of one where Colin goes off while he's holding the gun in that confrontation, right, in the house.
Hmm.
Like I had to stop and play it back a second time just so that I caught the entirety of what he was saying during
Yep.
that scene. Such a powerful scene, such a great scene. Like I think like it was pitch perfect in terms of its tone, in terms of the message you were
Hmm.
trying to put across. It was very real. It wasn't pretentious. It wasn't forced upon the scene in any sort of way. And like, despite only one person speaking the entire time, more or less, like the acting really carried through. And so I
Hmm.
love it. So, I mean, like no spoilers or anything, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that scene blew my mind, right? But at the
Hmm.
same time, there are so many vignettes and like small moments of human realization, I think, especially with um Miles's kid, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
those two scenes with Miles's kid. Wow, I mean, like that
Hmm.
really kind of drove home a lot of what this film is trying to speak to, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree, man. Like, I often try not to. I know it is kind of the biggest selling point and the biggest drawback to the film, in that whenever I try to explain to someone that the movie climaxes with a black guy shaming a white cop through battle rap, it
It sounds
sounds
ridiculous. Yeah,
like
it sounds
ridiculous, you know?
ridiculous, but it is so good. It is so
I
good.
know,
Like
right?
in my opinion, right? Like that.
Yeah.
I guess we could call it a monologue, right? That monologue sits up there with a
Hmm.
lot of the monologues of great cinema, right? You want to go talk
Mm.
about Reservoir Dogs or any kind of like monologue that you get in a Tarantino film, right? Like that
Yeah.
easily could stand on par with that, right? Like, and it's
Hmm.
so kind of telling the way they decided to do that. Like in the beginning, whenever they kind of do their rhymes, and it's like it's kind of like cloy, it's kind of like toying. They're just kind of having fun, and for
Yep.
him to deliver what he has struggled with over the entire course of the film as we follow him in verse is
Yeah.
extremely powerful. And there's this one line where he just says like you are only you've only learned to listen to a black man when he raps, right? So here am I rapping, and
Yeah.
I was just like, I was blown away, right, by
Yep.
the delivery of that speech, in
Mhm.
verse, mind you. It's solid, really, really solid.
Definitely, man. Daveed Diggs obviously can rap and can sing as well. A lot of you may know him from Hamilton, the hit Broadway musical, where he is essentially Lin-Manuel Miranda's alternate.
Hmm.
So he is playing Hamilton when Lin-Manuel Miranda is not there, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is not there
Yep.
anymore. And he's a bunch of other shows as well. He's on a show called Central Park right now, which is a musical comedy. So he is from a musical background, and he's also from a spoken word poetry
Hmm.
background. And you can kind of tell that these two friends were kind of from the spoken word poetry scene, because there are some pretty interesting, or if you're into that scene, like, there's some big name cameos, like if you know who Phil and Sarah Kay
Hmm.
are, like Sarah Kay plays a housing agent that they meet here just very short
Yeah.
while. So it kind of gives this whole, like you saying, like this Arthur Miller meets slam poetry vibe to the movie
Yeah.
lah. Yeah. And it's also like a really great visually, like it's also a really great city symphony that toasts and laments
Hmm.
Oakland, which is, it feels alive, it's blazing with street photography, and attuned to its incidental encounters to contradict with contradiction and irony. For example, like we meet a white artist whose work honors the people displaced by gentrification, and also the oak trees cut
Yeah.
down to pave the way that the Oakland that is now being lost. And we witness the priceless moment when Colin's mother, whose home is bedecked with African drums and photos of Angela Davis, who vows not to join the exodus of longtime residents by outpriced housing. Like real estate housing,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. A part of it is also like the movie is quite theatrical too, in terms of speechifying and
Yeah.
dialogue, but visually is quite cinematic as well, and as it is musically.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it is a beautifully shot film. I really have to say. Like they always manage to hit the right tone for the scene, right? Like one of my favorite scenes is when Miles like walks into the hairdressing salon
Yeah,
and tries
yeah,
to
yeah,
pitch the curlers, hair straighteners. I can't remember which one. But it's
yeah.
hilarious. It's so good, the to and fro, and it's kind of like you've got your chorus there with all like the black women sitting around getting their hair done.
Hmm.
It's so good. The way that particular scene was framed, and I think it added a fair bit to just to the point that there's a fair deal of good, well placed humor here, despite the fact that it's amidst something, like Collins go through some
So
very
heavy.
serious like PTSD, right, from witnessing
Hmm.
another black man get shot by the police.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great because, like, when you kind of pitch the basic premise of it to someone, this piercing drama about race and class and identity and expectations, and about what the world sees and expects when it looks at you, and how hard it is when you've been raised in this culture and steeped in these pathologies to see people as who they are rather than what you expect or
Hmm.
fear. You would think that it's a very heavy film, but it's often lightened by a lot of comedic elements, which really helps the movie in terms of pacing and
Yeah.
flow, and just being able to digest it without kind of the heavy-handed Spike Lee sledgehammer that, like, that just hits you in the face. It's a bit more subtle with
Yeah.
it. Um, it's discussion about different things, are like who gets to say the N
Hmm.
word, um, uh, being white, and yet being raised in basically black culture, things like that. It's a lot more nuanced than I expected to be, and from I haven't seen this film since 2018, but like, it's still one of my favorites, and I recommend it more and more because it is relevant to these times. It's wild, it's singular, and it's just this feast and feat of self definition through verbal dexterity.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. I mean, like, not really sure what else we can actually say about it, except like it's not what people. This film was not what I expected it to be, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
even as we kind of discuss it now, it's
Yep.
gonna be not what people expect. You know, if you're listening to this and you're curious about it and you pick it up, I think like even then, as best as we're trying to explain what's been going
Yeah.
on and what it's about and all of that, like this blind spotting will take you by surprise. I think just how good it is, just the way that it's run. It is a common it's like coalescing so many kind of like different facets, right, at the same time,
Mm.
that fit very nicely together and something that really kind of works, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
a snippet into kind of the lives of these two particular characters that both Daveed Diggs and Rafael Casal bring, that is because at the end of the movie, like, there's no kind of definitive uh ending to that, right? Like, there's not, like, life goes on from there on end, and it's such an interesting kind of like take on that, right? Like,
Mm.
you kind of want something to happen, you kind of want something to kind of like be definitive about that, but nothing really comes of it. You
Of
know,
course. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, like, really really enjoyed Blind Spotting for sure, man. Thanks for the recommendation.
Definitely. And if you want to watch Blind Spotting, it's not available on Netflix, but it is. Well, actually, it is available on Netflix in America. But if you want to watch it, it's also available on Amazon Prime and various VOD platforms. If you want to get it, highly recommend it. Good look at race and class and
Yep.
gentrification. That isn't uh I mean, not that Dear White People is bad, but it doesn't scold you into thinking a certain way, and it's not as heavy-handed as kind of the Spike Lee stuff. Those all have artistic merits as well, but I just kind of enjoyed Blind Spotting more because it is so much it's so nuanced and it approaches the subject matter in a way that you probably would not expect even after listening to this
Yeah.
review. Uh, Next up, let's talk about our second nonfiction title that we've talked about on this
Hmm.
podcast. It's called Pina. Would you like to give a little synopsis here?
Yeah. So, Pina is a 2001 documentary done by Wim Wenders. Not
2011, right?
2011, yes. Wim Wenders, and it was interesting. Okay, I can't really remember how someone introduced this film to me. I can't remember what the details surrounding them is, but like, suffice to say that it made a big enough impact for me to want to keep a copy. Enough for us to rewatch this, like, what are we, 9 years later?
9 years later,
Yeah.
yeah.
Pina is about Pina Bausch, and she's a much loved German dancer and choreographer, whose work was pretty unique for its time, right? Like, she enjoyed incorporating a lot of like nature, a lot of earth, water, and stone, a lot of like
Mm,
cityscapes within her works themselves, into the music, into the movement. And so Wim Wenders, who's also a German director, right, was a big fan, and he had started speaking to her about filming this documentary a fair bit of time, a fair couple of years before it actually came out. The
yep.
problem is, what he wanted to do, right? He wanted to bring the documentary into the theater space with 3D technology, right? Which at that point in time was
Yes.
still kind of developing.
Mm,
Unfortunately, if you want to watch this now, it's pretty hard to get a hold of the 3D version of it. But
yes.
suffice to say that it on its own, without all the special effects and stuff like that, it is still a fantastically beautiful and evocative look at Pina Bausch and her work. So what
Mm-hmm.
happened was that while he was waiting for kind of the 3D technology to catch up to the point where he could bring his vision to life, Pina Bausch was actually diagnosed with cancer, and she died just a
Mm.
few days in
2009, yeah.
2009, just a few days before filming
Yeah.
starts. So
Mm.
that actually changed the entire kind of plan for Wenders. And what happened was that he decided to go ahead with it anyway. And even despite the fact that Pina was supposed to be kind of the central voice where she explains, her process and all of that, and how she chooses her dancers to be in her troupe and so on and so forth. Like, she is
Yep.
ultimately missing from the narrative. of the
Mm.
documentary itself, and instead what we get is like the sense of um we get everything else, right? Like we have her troop members who speak of her very fondly, and we don't get
Mm-hmm.
any sort of explanation from the woman herself, unfortunately. But
Mm.
that makes it such a fascinating watch, because then it becomes like an in memoriam for her. And I think
Yeah, a
that
tribute. Yeah.
that framed the way that the documentary turned out vastly, right, from what we would have gotten if she had been well and had been alive at the time of filming.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what's interesting? There are a couple. Basically, the film has a lot of these small vignettes of well, interviews, I guess, with the dancers of a troupe and her friends and the people who knew her. But Wenders
Yeah.
chooses a very interesting kind of style of doing it. What he does is that interspersed throughout all the dance movements of the film, which we'll get to in a bit,
Mm-hmm.
he decides to use close-ups, like silent close-ups of all these dancers, right? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
really, really tight ones, and sometimes just a medium shot, and they don't speak. Instead, they relate their stories about Pina Bausch via voiceover, right? So there's
Yeah.
a bit of a
Yeah.
like a kind of like a disconnect, and I'm not really sure if it was because he wanted to capture um something in those moments, right, when he's doing those close-ups that wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
related to a word, and give these interviewees, as far as we can call them that, some time to kind of process the words that they wanted to go along with that, because there it does feel like a bit of a disconnect there, but it doesn't change the fact that it's extremely powerful, right? Like, one is a very visceral, in the moment visual reflection, because they are being interviewed a few days after her funeral, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then the voiceovers then come in a lot later, I think, when they have time to kind of process and kind of memorialize her in the things that they want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens fairly frequently, and we start to see that what kind of character that Pina has. Like, it's there's no overarching narrator to this story. There's no one who's like filling in the gaps. There's no voice that says, "Oh, this is who she is and this is who she is." Our impression of who Pina Bausch is in this documentary is largely formed by these very small anecdotal quotes and stories about um, her personal interactions with the people around her, and
Yep.
it is a culmination of all these small interactions that you get an idea of who she is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
kind of like her dances form also like young and old, and different both male and female, and all sorts of different like kind of races, and they all speak in their own native language.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fascinating look at people kind of like telling a story about someone who has passed on, who continues to live in their memory. And
Yes.
then
Yeah.
we've got all of that kind of like emotional undercurrent kind of going on, and the very, very beautifully choreographed and very beautifully shot dance sequences that we get, of
Mm-hmm.
which we have kind of like four major movements that we never kind of see the end of. These movements are interspersed throughout the film, so they cut
Mm-hmm.
back and forth. I did a quick search about all of it. So there's one called Cafe Mueller,
Mm-hmm.
which she was well known for, where basically like dancers continually rearrange a room filled with chairs and tables, and wander around it, and continue to fall over like the continually like changing
Mm-hmm.
landscape around them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my personal favorite, which is the water one. I don't know what the uh, I don't know what it's called.
The title is
Yeah,
right.
I don't know
Yeah.
what
I mean.
yeah, it's an onstage waterfall. It involves some water. It starts off with like just like it looks like it's raining, and then it becomes like a full on thing. Uh
Yep.
oh, okay, it's called Volmond, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and that to me is like an amazing. It's amazing to be able. Okay, dance is often experienced. I'm no dance aficionado, right? Dance in terms of like
Yeah.
dance in theater, and within a theater space and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's use of the camera to bring the audience onto the stage is kind of fascinating. I
Mm.
really wish that I had seen it in cinemas in the 3D format, because I did not. I saw it in
Yes.
cinema without the 3D effects, because I'm just generally not a big fan of having those 3D effects.
3D. Yeah.
So I am curious about what I did miss out on. But even then, even without all of that on top, like it's such a different way of viewing the movement, and being able to, you feel a lot closer to the action, just because
Mm-hmm.
like you feel like you're on stage as opposed to sitting in a chair, right, behind and some distance away. um
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so there's Cafe Muller, there's the woman, and the opening kind of like big dance scene that we get uses Stravinsky's like Rite of Spring, right? And it's just like this
Yeah.
huge stage with like it looks like dirt or like sand or earth or soil, and dancers go across and do their routine, and they kind of leave traces of themselves, like as they kind of walk and like roll around in that. uh you know
Mm-hmm.
so good. It's so, oh man, I know I've used evocative before, but like it's incredibly
Yeah.
beautiful to watch. And again, I'm no dance aficionado. I think I can count on one hand the number of kind of like uh dance recitals that I've been to. But at
Same.
the same
Yeah.
time, that the visual representation of that in a completely different form, right? Because now it's cinema instead.
Mm-hmm.
Is something that's stuck with me for quite a while, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of recommend this, because like until we kind of compared notes to see what we wanted to recommend each other, I don't think it had been on the surface of my mind for so long. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then rewatching it again, I'm just like, okay, now I mean, like I feel like I may have a slightly better appreciation than I did 9 years ago of it. Just being
Definitely.
a bit more
Yeah.
informed about, like, back then I was not dragged. I was, someone said let's go watch it, and I was like, cool. But now
Okay.
with a lot more information about
Mm.
the backstory and all of that, and just doing some reading up, like I feel I'm a bit more filled in as to the context of the movie itself, and even with more context, right, it doesn't take away that it's a work of art. I think as far as documentary goes, trying to capture um, the work of someone who was supposed to be there but isn't there,
Mm-hmm.
and just having all the people involved in her life doing the thing that was most important to her, which was dance,
Yeah.
and paying tribute to her via their dancing is incredibly moving and powerful. So,
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
yeah. So, what do you think about it? You know.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, like, I had no idea who Pina Bausch was. This is kind of like my first introduction to her. Uh, the film does get across very quickly that she is someone to be revered. The hushed tones with which her troupe and her friends talk about
Mm-hmm.
her gives the impression that she is a genius, and as we come to learn that she is. Part of me really, really does wish that I had seen it in the digital 3D format, because this film was made for 3D. So also I've read, apparently it was quite well received. Seemingly the stereoscopic techniques go well with dance, and I can only
Mm-hmm.
imagine, because like 3D has kind of had this bad rap as only for fantasy, or like roller coaster action packed thrilling kind of things, right? So this would be a brand new way to watch dance,
Mm.
and it's kind of sad. Weirdly enough, I mean, this is kind of an aside lah. I have seen a dance 3D movie. It was it was a Step Up 3D, which is totally different. So like I'm sad that like Step Up 3D was my only encounter with 3D dance lah, and I kind of wish I had seen this instead. What I really liked, and maybe some people may disagree with me,
Mhm.
I feel like this is for hardcore dance enthusiasts in a sense, because I think non-experts may feel frustrated that Pina refuses to provide background information or expert
Yeah.
commentary beyond a few bits of archival footage and things like that, or rehearsals and things
Yeah.
like that, right? But I did enjoy, because it is almost austerely focused on just the work
Hmm.
itself, which is what Pina Bausch should be defined by.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not one of those people that's too interested in like the personal life of this genius musician that I know
Yeah.
lah. Like I kind of want to be interested into the work. I want to delve into the work, and it presents the work kind of refreshingly without
Yeah.
context. So me as a person viewing the art can interpret it for myself lah, without knowing all the extraneous
Hmm.
details lah.
Hmm.
And I think that's how Pina Bausch might probably have preferred it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do believe so. Like, I enjoy the fact that there's no like overt explication of what's going on, right? And
Yeah,
even like
yeah.
some of the interviews that they have, you kind of realize like that's very much in tone with the way she kind of is. I think like even if she was around, had been around for this, the
Mm,
filming of this, I don't think there would have been much explanation going on, a lot of like exposition. Just because like in some of the conversations that she has, like the conversations feel
yes.
a bit incomplete, right? Like when they say, "Oh,
Yeah.
she asked me to, you said your strength is in being vulnerable, right?" And like that feels like there's more to that conversation, but that in the interview just stops there. That particular dancer just stops there, and the rest of it is just told
Mm-hmm,
by her face, right? And
mm-hmm,
again, she's not saying it on camera. She's just like kind of sitting in the moment about the news that Pina Bausch has just died, and she's saying things after the fact. And you can tell from
mm.
their voices, and especially I think I really like the fact that they almost all of them they decided to speak in their own kind of native languages. Um,
Yes.
because her troupe is kind of international, right? And there's something very true to that. Like they were able to express a certain amount of sentimentality and sorrow, um,
Mm.
and fondness that I think you wouldn't have gotten if everything had just been in English, for example. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I
I
agree.
I totally agree with you. I think that if there was more kind of like explaining going on, it
Mm-hmm,
would help certain people, especially if they feel like this is something that's very far removed from their ability to appreciate without explanation. But I
mm-hmm.
I mean I really feel like just watching the movement of the dancers alone, right? In this very fascinating settings, especially the ones
Mm-hmm.
in the city, in the cityscapes themselves, or
Yes,
located
yeah,
within
yeah.
the buildings, and all that. Wow, those really, really got me. Like those weren't part of the four big movements, but
Yep.
like I really enjoyed those. Seeing those scenes as well. I think those scenes stood out to me the most. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like because dance as an art form is wordless. I mean, typically lah, usually it's wordless. Like, I don't think that Pina Bausch would want to verbally explain what any of these pieces mean and what her legacy means. So I think it's kind of like apt that you kind of encompass her legacy through this impressionistic
Hmm.
glimpses of bodies moving, of body language, of undefined, unfinished sentences. Things
Yeah.
like that. Like, it all feels very dance lah. Like, you know so I actually feel like it's the most appropriate way to approach a subject like this.
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, loved it, man. It was engaging and fascinating, and I got a really big respect for a choreographer that like I wasn't familiar with. I mean, not coming from the world of musical or dance theater, so I mean, I really had no idea who she was. And
Yeah.
these are the best kinds of documentaries because I get to learn things that I didn't know about before.
Yeah. I think in the grand scheme of documentaries that we've watched or we've discussed and things like that, like this is pretty unique, right? In terms of the
Hmm.
way that it's kind of portrayed, and I just thought it would be something different, for us to kind
Yep.
of like watch and discuss.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Yeah. Highly recommended both of this. Of course, Insecure, our main topic, recommended as well. It's available on HBO
Hmm.
Go or HBO Max if you
Yep.
have it. Pina and Blindspotting are available on various streaming platforms. All you got to do is just Google it, and it's there. I think both are available on Amazon Prime if you want to
Yep.
watch it. Nice, great, varied amount of topics that we did this month, this week, and then in a couple of weeks we'll be back actually. We are hoping to get a special guest for that one, but in case it doesn't come through in
Yeah.
time, don't want to announce it
Yep.
yet, but it is probably like weirdly enough the topic that we started this podcast for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big one.
So,
It's a big one.
yeah, it's a big one. So if we get to do that, that'll be cool. If not, it's fine. We can push it to a later date. But what we can confirm is that I have watched embarrassingly, my first time watching Nausicaa of the Valley of the
Yeah.
Wind. My big Studio Ghibli, Ghibli
Ghibli.
blind
Yep.
spot. Ghibli, yeah. And I'm probably gonna recommend a dramedy called Rami if Isa Fong hasn't seen it yet. Have you seen
I've
Rami?
caught like 2 episodes. I mean, like I started after you started raving about it. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So I'm 2 episodes in at the moment. I'm enjoying it. I think it's pretty interesting. I feel like we
cool.
probably have a lot to kind of talk about, regarding
Mm,
that. So I'm looking forward to kind of like finishing it and having like a deep chat about it. Yeah.
nice. So you have season one already.
No, I've just watched the first 2 episodes. That's it. Right.
Okay, cool. Nah, no
Yeah.
worries, no worries. I can
Is
I
it
can provide
is
it
it
for you.
season 2 already?
Season two wrapped. Finished a month
Okay,
ago.
nice, cool, cool. I mean, like, I'm looking forward to kind of like seeing the entirety of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I feel like there's a lot of very specific Islam jokes that I don't know whether people get if you're not, if you don't practice or have not ever practiced.
Uh,
But it's just extra funny if you know what that prayer movement is supposed to be, and then I will get into that
yeah,
next week,
yeah,
lah.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah. To Phil Van once again, thanks to Shafiq. I've been
I'm
Hidzir.
Isa.
We'll catch you guys next time.
Ciao.
Peace.